this process began for me with my late best friend and business partner working together, Richard, who you know well.
Yeah.
And it began with Richard spending time with his dying father a dozen or so years ago. And his father had lived this really amazing life, and he had retired in Paris, and so Richard was spending lots of time in Paris with his dad. And he was surprised to find out his dad was afraid of dying. And he was surprised because his father had lived both this amazing life, but secondly, what he considered a very spiritually connected life. And what he came to find out is what his father was afraid of was that he hadn't lived what my term for now, what Richard and I came up with, is he hadn't lived true to what was most important about his life.
Mm.
And Richard and I began that inquiry for ourselves. And, probably many of the listeners are aware of, there's a well-known book written about it, but a number of surveys have shown that people at the end of their life, if they have a moment to reflect, the most common regret is, I wish I'd lived a life more true to myself.
Right.
And the second one is, I wish I hadn't worked so much. Yeah. And that so resonated for me because it's a real conundrum. And, for someone like yourself and probably every one of your listeners, when you've decided early in life that accomplishment is important to you, like it's an important part of your identity. I want to accomplish. And not everyone is like that, which is fine. Not everyone needs to be like that. What it often leads to is an over emphasis on work and getting validation and value from our work. And then before you know it, there we are at the end of our life with, shit, I wish I hadn't worked so much.
Right.
So,
but what you're not saying is it's a foregone conclusion that work doesn't fulfill on
right
what's most deeply true to us.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And there's two directions to come at that from. And what's become very common out in the world is, work-life balance. I need more vacations. And yet that doesn't do it either, because I love accomplishment and I love my business and I love what I do. So the real answer for us became, okay, we want to create a way where someone can reinvent the world of business for themselves. So it's a pathway to live true to their life's calling. So that was the first big commitment. How do I separate myself from what I call the force field of business?
Right.
That's filled with, compete and win and selling and cold calls and leads and process, all that familiar verbiage and language. Yes, win, profit is the ultimate scorecard. Yeah. So how do I reinvent business so I'm not sacrificing wealth and market success? In fact, that can be an outcome of aligning myself, but how do I reinvent it so it's a pathway for me to experience living true to my life's calling? Then the big question for Rich and I became, what's the access for someone to get in touch with what they can then articulate as, this is my soul's purpose. This is my life's calling. This is why I'm on planet Earth.